I'm Bethany Abrams, and this is Pastor Jeff, and we're here with the Weekend Extra. So, I'm sorry, here I am in a conversation. My question for you today after the sermon was, we're talking about forgiving as we've been forgiven.
Yeah.
And just curious, how do you do that without being manipulated, without being a doormat to someone? How do you continually take that little ping pong ball and give it to God?
Yeah. It's a great question, actually. And there's a balance, right? And so I think in all things we're looking at Jesus and our relationship with God, how he interacts with us. And so God is a loving God. He's a gracious God. He's a merciful God. He's not an enabler. He's also a just God, a righteous God, even a judgmental God, right? So God judges what is right and what's wrong. And so all that to say, God definitely has like boundaries and parameters in our relationship with him. And we would look at forgiveness through those lenses as well and say, I'm willing to forgive you, but there are going to be boundaries. There's going to be parameters in our life. Forgiving somebody is not the same as trusting them.
Got it.
And so when that trust has been violated, forgiveness is a gift. Trust is something you earn. Mm-hmm. And so when you have violated that trust, it has to be earned back over time. And I think if you have the type of personality that you're quick to trust, you have to look and say, are they actually earning back my trust, or they just keep asking for forgiveness, right? So I remember one time I was having a conversation with one of my kids, and they were doing something. It was kind of this habit in their life, and they were quick to apologize, which I was grateful for. They would do it. They'd be like, hey, I'm really sorry again. And I finally stopped them after a bit of time, and I said, I want us to stop before we have to apologize. I appreciate your heart. I'm tired of you apologizing. You actually need to change, and you actually need to deal with this weakness in your life. So it's kind of all of that, and I think wise counsel and a multitude of counselors, helps us with that because we don't always see it. But it's not I'm laying down and it's always okay.
Right.
It's when you fail, I will forgive, but you have to earn trust. That doesn't mean I won't forgive you.
Right.
It means I won't trust you, and I won't just rely on your behavior being what it should be.
Right. I think I find too in that sometimes people are offended when I say, I don't trust you, I forgive you. And it's hard to point out the differences between those two things. So how can we practically say that to someone, this is, how we go about this.
So to be offended by that is probably manipulative, and grace is never demanded. So when somebody looks at me and says, you have to forgive me and you have to get past this, I would look at them and say, that's not your place. I can give you grace. I can give you forgiveness. You cannot demand that of me.
Right.
And so when somebody demands that or says, well, you say you're forgiving, but you're not, they're being manipulative. They're demanding something they have not earned yet. And sometimes you just have to put your foot down with them. Sometimes you can point that out and they can see it a little bit. But it's I think if you can just think in those two categories, forgiveness is free, trust is earned.
Right.
And when there's patterns and cycles that people are going through and they're always coming back and saying, you have to forgive me. And I'm not talking about a forgiving relationship. I'm talking about a particular action that keeps being done again and again and again.
Right.
You would look and say, I'm not going to do that. And just change the scenario. If your bank kept embezzling your money, you would quit banking there. Right. Right? They would violate the trust. If your mechanic, if you paid your mechanic and they never fixed your car, well, it's the same thing in a relationship. When that action repeats itself and repeats itself and repeats itself, I'm not going to embrace that action again. That doesn't mean I walk around bitter and angry and looking to fight you.
Right.
But I'm not going to allow that action to continue to affect me or maybe my family that way anymore.
Okay. Yeah. Well, that's really good stuff, and appreciate it. I can't wait to hear what else you have to say about being Love Liable. I'm Bethany. This is Jeff. We'll see you next week on the Weekend Extra.